officers, dear President of the Chamber of Deputies, ministers, deputies, guests of honor, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, university members, good morning and a warm welcome to this 10th celebration of the University of Luxembourg. As you probably know, when a child is born, the 10 first years forges its character. Well, this is quite true for a university as well. Today, the University of Luxembourg is a bit much like her country, multicultural, multilingual, open, close to the people, but also down to earth. That's an actual very remarkable achievement within 10 years. So we're all very pleased to welcome you here today. We're not going to bore you during 2 hours with lectures, but we're going to make this a nice session filled with speeches, music, a few words from official people. And we won't ask you to take an exam at the end, but we'll simply ask you to join us in a cocktail. But before we get started, what is the university? What does it mean? And what actually attracts students to Luxembourg? So today, of course, is a celebration day. But what would the university be without the man who's been at the helm of the university for the past 10 years? Please welcome the president of the university, Mr. Rolf Tarach.
Thank you. Altesse royale, Monsieur le Président de la Chambre des députés, jouissant depuis quelques jours d'un repos bien mérité, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Monsieur le Président du Conseil de gouvernance de l'Université du Luxembourg, Executive Director of the Nobel Foundation, Madame la Vice-présidente de la Commission européenne, Monsieur le ministre d'État honoraire, Monsieur l'archevêque, recteurs, collègues, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, Mesdames et Messieurs les députés, autorités, Mesdames et Messieurs. J'ai aujourd'hui le plaisir de maintenant vous donner la bienvenue à cette cérémonie des 10 ans de l'université. On est une jeune université et on est très content de vous avoir ici aujourd'hui. Die Damen und die Herren, es ist für mich ein Plezier, Haut an Hai, willkommen zu heißen. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, ich freue mich sehr, Sie hier heute willkommen zu heißen. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you here today on this 12th of October, which is the day of the discovery of America, and to celebrate together 10 years. I have ordered my words in 4 groups, and the first group is very simple. It's just to say thank you to a certain number of people. I would like to start with Madame Erna Eniko-Schöpjes for her vision in creating the university. She is the only holder of the medal of the university. To Monsieur Germain Dondelinger for implementing her ideas, and he's probably the finest connoisseur of the university, and Prime Minister Jean-Claude Juncker for having an attitude of laissez-faire, which was very good in those days. I would also like to thank former Minister Bildchen, who has been minister for most of these 10 years in charge of the university. He has helped us always to have a good budget, which, as you know very well, is extremely important for an institution which depends eventually, from public money. And then, of course, I would like to thank very many members of the parliament, and many of those are here today with us, for their support. And also the first chair of the board of the university, Raymond Kirsch, who is unfortunately not anymore with us. I would also like to thank all the former vice presidents, deans, directors, and so on, all those who have led the university in the last 10 years. And the first outsiders of the university who helped us, starting with Mr. Berend Beaver, who was the first one to give a legacy to the university, and of course all the companies and people responsible for the companies who have financed or are still financing chairs at the university, starting with TDK and Athos and SAS and ArcelorMittal and Deutsche Bank. And then we have 2 chairs financed by the 2 largest cities in Luxembourg, la Ville de Luxembourg and la Ville d'Esch. Thank you very much for that too. And of course the Chamber of Commerce, which has been supporting us all through these years, the Chambre des députés too, and sundry donors. Then I would like to thank the Fonds National de la Recherche for its excellent programs, of which we are heavy users. Just go on with that. I would like to thank the staff of the university, academic and non-academic, administrative staff, scientific staff, technical staff. Without the staff, the university would just not be here, and the staff has been great. And I would like to thank the students. There's no university without students. We have now 6,400. We had at the beginning around 2,000. Okay, they are great. We are very proud of them. I would like to thank the board. Several members of the board are here. 4 members of the board of 7 members have been in the board all through these almost 10 years. And I would like to thank the council for his very important role, which sometimes is not appreciated enough. And finally, I would like to thank my team and close collaborators, basically for putting up with me. And that's it. Thank you all for coming here today. My second point is to say a few things about the past. Now, it is not my role to say that, that we are great. You will find in the book, which you can take with you if you feel like, with which we celebrate our 10 years, it's not a book of publicity, not at all. It is a book of retrospection, of analysis, of criticism, of autocriticism, of giving different points of view. You will see that if you read through it, we don't say all the same things, not at all. So there are contradictions in the book, but I mean, that is what corresponds to a lively university, where not everybody has exactly the same ideas of what the university should be, and that's okay. And of course, there are forecasts in the book. Then, the most important thing I can say about the university is that we are here. The university is there. It is a fully fledged university. We have 40 Bologna programs which we offer. We have all these students. We have 460 PhD students, 60 or 70 PhDs go away, leave us each year with their PhD degree. We have the 650 adjunct people who work somewhere else and teach with us, 230 academic staff, and so on. We are very proud of what we have been doing. We are known, and to say the truth, I don't think we could have done much more in only 10 years. And finally, I think we can sport a distinct and attractive profile, very European profile. multilingual profile, international profile. Mobility is essential with us. We have close contact with the society. We offer more than 600 seminars and conferences and so on, debates per year. And there are more and more people from Luxembourg participating in all these activities, which is, of course, what it should be. Third point is the challenges. There are always challenges, and that's, of course, the most exciting thing. We have to, whatever we do, we have to do it better. That's a permanent challenge for a serious institution. You do something, do it better next time. Learn always. The university is a place where everybody learns always, and that's what it should be. Those who don't learn anymore, it's a pity. They miss one of the most exciting things in life, which is learning. So we have to do what we do, but better. We have to do better research. We have to do better teaching, so transfer knowledge to individuals. We have to do better transfer of technology and of knowledge to society, to companies, and so on. And of course, we have to improve our administration. We will do all these things. A second challenge is that we have to make sure that our main site in Esch-Belval, when we are there, has the best possible synergies with the site which we will keep in the city of Luxembourg. You know, these two places should work really together. The bachelor students should be together. They have to talk, the bachelor students of mathematics, they have to talk to the bachelor students of law, and the ones of law with the bachelor students in engineering. You know, this is essential. We are interdisciplinary. Today, the problems are so complex that you can't attack them just starting from one single discipline. You have to have a broad view. And for that, we have to put young people together, and we have to put our professors together. So that is a major challenge. There wouldn't be anything worse, eventually, than having two sites which don't talk to each other, and eventually to have basically two universities, which by that, you know, would be much more irrelevant. And finally, as a third challenge, also a permanent challenge, is that we need more of the sterling people we have already. We have excellent people. We have 7, 8, 9 professors who are, you know, top level worldwide. We need more of those. We have to go on looking for these people. We have to proactively search for them, look for them, look where they are, call them and say, you know, come here. Not, you know, just announce a position and then sit back and say, oh, hopefully we will have good candidates. No, we have to look for them. And that should be done much more. I think we can do much more, and we want to do much more. And my last group of thoughts is dreams. We always have to dream. A life without dreams is nothing. So let me dream a little bit with you and just present 3 dreams. I dream a lot, but I mean, here today, I will limit myself to 3 dreams. And with this, I keep within my 10 minutes, which corresponds to 10 years. When the university is 20 years old, it will be 20 minutes, the rector of that time. Now, my 3 dreams are: the first one, you know, a dream when the university is 40 years old. And then the dream is that it should be a world-class university relevant to the country. When the university is 40 years old, within, that's to say, in 30 years. My second dream is when the university is 30 years old. So that's only in 20 years, that's already near. And what we have to do is to make it into the ranking, the Times Higher Education ranking of universities younger than 50 years old, to make it into the top 100 positions. I think we can do it if we get the help of the society, of the government, of the staff, and of all of you. And my last dream, and with this I finish, is when the university is 20 years old, so, you know, in 10 years, so that's quite soon. And that is, you're somewhere, you know, in South Africa, or, you know, in New Zealand, you know, somewhere down under, and then somebody meets a person from Luxembourg, from the Grand Duchy, and this somebody says, oh, you come from the Grand Duchy. And then he says, oh, this is colloquial. Oh, they have a bloody good university to boot. Thank you very much for listening. Merci vielmals für zu lauschen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tarach. It is now my pleasure to welcome the keynote speaker of the day, who comes from Sweden, a person who holds a degree, a doctorate in, economics, of course. A very busy man this week, the executive director of the Nobel Foundation. Please welcome Mr. Lars Heikenstein. And thank you for being here today, despite a very busy schedule.
Your Royal Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends here in Luxembourg. Let me begin with a thank you for having invited me here at this important event at the 10th anniversary of the Luxembourg University. It is a great honor. Also, it has given me a chance to come back here to Luxembourg, a country where I actually lived only 2 years ago for roughly 5 years, and an opportunity to see some old friends like today's host, Rolf Tarrak. At the beginning of his presidency, Bill Clinton said something along the lines that I used to have a sense of humor, but they told me it wasn't presidential, so I had to quit. And you know, I don't want to draw the parallel too far, but it's a little bit like that to be a director of the Nobel Foundation. There is so much history, there is so much tradition, there is so much prestige. But I will hope, I hope that I will be able to keep you awake anyway this morning. 10 years is not a long time for a university, and it's not a long time in scientific context. But it is a long time in terms of what has happened during the last 10 years. A lot of what has happened has been positive. A revolution has, as we all know, occurred in communication, including growth of internet and a lot of new media. Our production systems have changed drastically and have become much more internationalized. We've seen striking improvements in living standards in large parts of the world, and the number of poor people have decreased drastically, in particular in Asia. Our societies have become more open, and democracy has taken root in more and more places. There have also been important advances in many sciences, not least in the life sciences. Average life expectancy has gone down. In the environmental field, too, actually positive things have happened. When I went back from my summer house in the archipelago of Stockholm a few weeks ago, I saw white-tailed eagles and seals, which is something we didn't do 10 to 20 years ago. Yet, despite all these advances, there are reasons to argue that humanity has never faced bigger challenges than today. In the Baltic Sea, which I just mentioned, the lack of oxygen is really a major problem. At worst, the sea might die. As the IPCC showed a couple of weeks ago, the climate is now changing rapidly due to emissions. And the radical policy changes that will be necessary have hardly even begun yet. People are continuing to die unnecessarily in large parts of the world from famine and diseases. Nor are the challenges only a matter of nature. Equally important is how our societies function. We are now gradually, knock on wood, I should perhaps say, getting out of the worst economic crisis in which the world have been during the post-war period. But we can nevertheless not bring ourselves to take the necessary decisions to avoid future crises in the future. Meanwhile, the core of our Western democracies is threatened by xenophobia and decay. The era in which Alfred Nobel lived had similarities to ours. It was an era of major scientific advances, improved communication, rapidly increasing trade, and growing international enterprises. In fact, he himself was involved in all these 4 areas. But it was also an area of great social tensions in the wake of industrialization and of obvious threats to peace. Alfred Nobel wanted to do something about this. When his will was opened in 1896, it came as a big surprise. No one knew about the content before. He declared there that what remained of his fortune, after some minor bequests to some people close to him, but what remained should be used to endow prizes, as he wrote, to those who during the preceding year have conferred the greatest benefit to mankind. By endowing prizes to those who had made breakthroughs in science, written good literature, or contributed to peace, he wanted to contribute to a better world. This was his idea with the prizes. Much can be said about the Nobel laureates and what their breakthroughs have meant for humanity. During the past 2 years alone, when I have headed the Nobel Foundation, several prizes have been awarded to people who dared to swim against the current, sometimes for decades, and who have made major contributions to our knowledge. One of them, incidentally, is Jules Hoffmann from Echternach. Among the 847 individual laureates that we after this week have had since 1901, many have made discoveries that are of an obvious interest to humanity, or of very direct significance. One example would be Röntgen, who got the prize already the first year for X-ray technology, Fleming for penicillin, Bardeen, Brattain, and Shockley for the transistor, Kilby for the microchip, or Game and Novoselov 3 years ago for graphene. Others, such as Einstein, for example, or Crick and Watson, via their discovery of the structure of DNA, have had a crucial influence on how we perceive the world. Yet, perhaps the most common prizes are for discoveries that have a more indirect long-term effect. Of course, the fact that many of the discoveries and contributions have been important to humanity, that many of these have been rewarded the Nobel Prize, does not in itself imply that the prize has fulfilled Nobel's desire to contribute to the greatest benefit of mankind. But I believe that it has. By every year, this week, highlighting the most outstanding research, that research which leads to major scientific breakthroughs. I think that the prizes help focus attention in the whole world on science in general and on path-breaking research in particular. For highly paid professors at the world's best universities, perhaps there is not such strong arguments in favor of continuing hard, difficult research. For them, in such cases, a Nobel Prize becomes important. It gives them an extra strong activity, a strong incentive to continue to work within their areas. The international character of the prize is also important. Before the Nobel Prize was started up, there were prestigious prizes in many other countries, in France, in Germany, in Great Britain, and so forth. But they were only for citizens from those countries. And none of those prizes have been able to keep up with the Nobel Prize afterwards. It underscores that knowledge exists for the benefit of us all. It focuses a spotlight on our shared responsibility for advancing knowledge and development worldwide. The Nobel Prizes for Literature and Peace are naturally also important for humanity. The Peace Prize has highlighted crucial contributions to peace and spurred continued commitment. Although I am among those who would have liked to see that the European Union had received the Peace Prize 10 years ago or so, for example, when it carried out its large eastward enlargement, or perhaps earlier when Greece and Spain and Portugal were incorporated in democratic Europe. We can hope that last year's prize succeeded in lifting the nationalist Euro debate higher, and by reminding all the people involved of the purpose with the European Union. One important aspect of the prize is independence of the prize awarding institutions. On that last theme, I can't refrain from telling you a story. Right before I began at the foundation, I had the opportunity to have a cup of tea with Dalai Lama in Stockholm. He started our conversation. Before we could say anything, he said that he wanted to underline how important it was for the world that we, given the prestige that the prize has, had acted with independence and a certain boldness. And of course, in his case, he was particularly thinking about the Chinese situation and how many today in the world are bowing to the Chinese authorities. But it is this is in fact part of a much larger story. Hitler prohibited Germans from receiving the prize, and the Soviets did the same when it was awarded to people that did not like the regime, such as Alexander Solzhenitsyn. But this in no way stopped the prize rewarding institutions from continuing to doing their work. Well, let me now turn a little bit more directly to research and research policy issues. Here in one of the founding countries of the European Union, on the border between Protestant and Catholic and Germanic and Latin, and where you in the same street can find a restaurant that serves foie gras and sauerkraut. It might be proper to see how European research policies look in a wider perspective. In the sciences, physics, chemistry, and medicine, Europe was dominating the scene before the Second World War. For several decades, Germany alone had more laureates than the United States. During the post-war period, however, this picture has changed totally. Based on countries where the laureates were born, the US today has a total of 187 laureates in the three sciences, compared to 69 for United Kingdom, 66 for Germany, and 30 for France. If we look at the country where the prize-rewarded research took place, then the dominance of the United States is even higher. Then the US has far more laureates than all of Europe combined. This year is a good example, by the way. There are several people who have a European and other country background and who are now at American universities. Also, it's worth noting that some new actors are coming up on the arena. Japan has made substantial advances during recent years. So far, 15 Japanese have received the science prizes. And in Asia, interest in cutting-edge research and in the Nobel Prize is enormous. Various countries, including Japan and Korea, have research policy targets that are directly connected to the number of prize winners. If it were true that Nobel Prizes were the only indicators of Europe's diminishing position in the field of research, perhaps then it would not be such a large reason to be concerned. But other indicators point unanimously in the same direction. One good example is statistical data showing how often research articles are cited in international journals. Here, US dominance is very large. It's also worth noticing that among the world's best universities today, according to most of the rankings, and I took the example of the so-called Shanghai ranking, which is one of the most well-known. If you look at that, there are two European universities, both from the United Kingdom, within the 10 best. And if you add another 10, you only get one European in there, and that's one from Switzerland. Not surprisingly, the largest countries in Europe, Germany, France, Great Britain, have been most successful in terms of the number of laureates. And there was a German one and a British one this year. In recent decades, it has been particularly the UK that's been able to do reasonably well. Viewed in relation to population size, it looks a little bit different. There you would find Switzerland on the top, and my own country, Sweden, as number second, and then the UK and Germany coming later on. The position of Europe and also of the countries within Europe largely reflects spending on research. How much one is prepared to spend obviously has an importance. obviously has an importance. Today, the US and several Asian countries are devoting much larger resources to basic research than Europe is. Joint European research programs, the EU research programs, also largely consist not on support to breakthrough research, but are more of the character of covert aid to industry, rather than the serious research efforts that one would need. I don't think Alfred Nobel would have liked this. He thought that we had a shared responsibility for dealing with vital world issues. Despite all today's economic worries, Europe is still one of the richest continents in the world. This gives us a special responsibility in world affairs and for world research. Having said this, I should underline that many other things besides the amounts invested in the research are also important, play a role for the results. The correlation between what you spend and what you get is not at all perfect. So what does it take to win a Nobel Prize and achieve scientific breakthrough? George Beadle, who received the prize in medicine in 1958, he had his own recipe. Study diligently, respect DNA, don't smoke, don't drink, avoid women and politics. That's my formula. Well, this might be true on the individual level, although I'm fairly sure that some of the laureates would take exception even with this. But whatever, I mean, these are not variables that we can so easily influence by policy. So let's focus a little bit more on that. And taking a larger perspective, and in fact, we talked about this yesterday at dinner, the intellectual environment in the large sense, in the broad sense, is very important. In concrete terms, this might have to do with what teachers we have in grade schools. A number of laureates have actually had other laureates as their teachers. There are high schools in Brooklyn that have produced a number of Nobel laureates. The same applies to secondary schools in Budapest during the early decades of the 20th century. Perhaps less surprising is that some universities do much better than others. Chicago would be a good example. Their standing is unique in economics. More than 20 Nobel laureates have either been students or teachers at the University of Chicago. Most important when shaping research policy are clear-cut goals and expectations of high scientific quality. On that, I think there is general agreement. There should never be a compromise on this, and it should be defined by international benchmarking. And the same type of standards and goals should be set for the individual research institutions. Successful research institutions are usually led by strong academic scholars that have visions, legitimacy, and also have real control over resources. Good research environments also seem to be characterized by the circulation of people and the circulation of ideas. People should come and go. They should be encouraged to come and they should be encouraged to go. Recruitment, as well as promotion and salary systems, should be coupled with rigorous evaluation systems, and mobility should be used as a vehicle for variation. And I know that this is difficult in many of our countries, but I think we have to face up to that. The way we set up our employment systems in universities cannot be the same as the way we set up them in other kinds of institutions if we want to achieve the results that we want to have. Good research institutions are also characterized by cross-fertilization between subjects. Another important aspect has to do with how you set up the division of labor between the funders and the universities. External funding should not be allowed to take over totally. It should be an important source of finance and a complementary finance, but there also needs to be a protected space for faculty to pursue independent lines of research under the aegis of a reasonably resource-rich overall institution. In general, the studies I've looked at show that the health and the standing of the research system and of its environments, like your university here, it needs to be a central concern across the political spectrum long term if you want to achieve results. Unfortunately, Europe does not score better on these environmental things than it scores on spending. In fact, I would argue the other way around. So for Europe, the fact that these links are not perfect between spending and result, it doesn't really help us much. And I should say that this has to do with things like a lack of contact between different countries. Cross-border movements are not as strong as they should be. And sometimes also movements between universities within each of our countries is not at all as high as it should be. And the international benchmarking is often lacking. However, all is not bad. I mean, the establishment of the European Research Council represents a major step in the right direction. The evaluations that have been made so far of the European Research Council indicates very good results. Today, the scientific community in Europe has embraced the ERC. In addition, and this is also important, the new system helps establishing norms and principles that can and are to an increasing extent being guiding for the individual countries in Europe. In other words, we have a good model. Let us build on that further and make sure that a growing portion of our shared research resources are channeled through this channel and through similarly set up channels. Well, it is now time for me to sum up. Today we are facing major challenges. This is true of the world as a whole, but also true of our own continent, Europe. I share with Alfred Nobel the opinion that solutions to our problems are largely a matter of scientific advances. All of our individual countries, as well as the European Union as a whole, have a responsibility for scientific development and advances. We cannot lean back and let others bear this responsibility. I am convinced that when Luxembourg established its university 10 years ago, you created a better and more solid foundation for building future prosperity within your country. Nobel laureates born in Luxembourg can remain in Echternach and contribute to the development of your country. They will also not have to wear a French hat when they receive their prize from the hand of the King in the Stockholm Concert Hall on December 10. But it's equally important for Luxembourg to join in and contribute to solving the challenges faced by the world as a whole. In the spirit of Alfred Nobel, the University of Luxembourg can contribute to the greatest benefit of mankind. In closing, let me congratulate your university on your first 10 years. And at the same time, I would like you the best of luck for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lars Heikenstein. We promised you speeches, but we promised you some music as well. So please keep your applause up for a former student of the University of Luxembourg, Maika Grossbusch.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Uni.lu. Happy birthday to you. From old friends and new, from good friends and true, may good luck go with you, and happiness too. Happy birthday to you. Happy Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Uni.lu. Happy birthday to you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Micah. So Micah, we said that you were a student at the university. What exactly did you study?
I studied at the University of Luxembourg, both at my bachelor's level in law and then continued my master's studies in European economic criminal law.
What are you doing today?
Today I'm studying at the University of Stockholm, doing international commercial arbitration law.
And tell us in a few words, what did you really like at the university in Luxembourg, being in Luxembourg?
What I really liked about the University of Luxembourg was that on one hand it offers a lot of opportunities to its students, at least to those who are willing to take them, and it also is willing to imply students in the decision processes made in their faculties, in their different programs.
If you had something to give as a piece of advice to students there now, what would you give?
Seize the opportunities that are given you, obviously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a beautiful voice. So, now we've heard what a former student of the university thinks of the University of Luxembourg, but what do others think of the university today, and what do they wish for the university for the future? We're going to talk about the university's future in a panel, but please welcome the panel members, and I'll start with Mrs. Martin Hansen, the Minister of Higher Education and Research. Then we have Gabriela Relic, you can come to the stand, who is a PhD student, and she's been awarded the Best Doctoral Thesis Award by the Amis de l'Université this year for a PhD thesis in psychology. Good afternoon, ladies. Then we have Mr. Romain Bausch, the president and the CEO of the satellite operator SES. And of course, Mr. Rolf Tarach, the president of the university. But before we begin this interesting debate, let's see what others think, but especially hope for the University of Luxembourg.
The university is fresh, bold and dynamic. It's really exciting to be a PhD student in LCSB in Belval because the university gets me access to high-level knowledge in a multicultural environment. So I'm not only learning to become a good researcher, I'm also learning a lot about the world.
Open-minded and warm-hearted. After 4 months of living here, I fall in love with this place.
New, European, and focused. One thing I like about being here is the proximity to the European institutions, particularly the Court of Justice. It's great to be able to observe what it does closely, but it's also great when one holds a lunchtime seminar, one has 2 judges in the audience.
Talents, cooperation, excellence. Education is key to Luxembourg's continuing success as a leading financial center. We are working with the university to develop programs and inspire students.
Positif, recherche, innovation. Là, en fait, il faut que l'université devienne plus mature, plus stable et devient un vrai acteur de l'économie, mais aussi du débat politique à Luxembourg.
Work in progress. Een große Satisfaktion, dass die überhaupt etwas gibt. Das ist für allem ganz schön, dass viel von der Universität geschwärzt wird, und dass es begriffen wird als ein Zukunftsprojekt für das Land.
Change, growth and the future of the country.
Steel has made Luxembourg over the last 150 years, and if we want to continue to be ahead of competition, we need today contact with institutions like the university. With the university, we could develop great projects, and in particular, the professorship we have sponsored on modern facade making out of steel.
Interessant, dass wir als letzte Bayer Studenten davon gewinnt waren, immer an Deutschland zu reisen. Und ich fand es schön zu sehen, dass ausländische Studenten nur immer in Lützeburg kommen.
Donc ça sera bien pour l'économie des magasins, ça fera plus de clients dans les magasins.
Ich fand das flott, dass du nicht aufwärts kommst, weil das zieht viele Studenten und da kommen viele junge Leute aufwärts wohnen. Ich möchte ein bisschen mehr leben.
Ich meine, wenn hier eine Uni ist, dann gibt es die Leute sich auch mehr die Schule interessieren.
Daheim, Studium, Möglichkeit. Also für 10 Jahre habe ich am Land als Lützeburger noch nicht die Möglichkeit gehabt, Ingenieurie zu studieren. Heute kann ich aber in einem Labor arbeiten, wo ich an großen Experimenten teilholen kann, was eine große Chance für alle Menschen ist.
Perspectives. It opens up the horizons. It's opened doors. The students don't have to decide on Germany, Belgium or France. They can also stay here in Luxembourg if they want to.
Multikultural, international und vielsprachig. Ich will gerne Medizin studieren, aber die Möglichkeiten hier im Land sind eben nur ein Jahr, da bist du gezwungen, am Ausland studieren zu gehen. Das wäre ein großer Vorteil, wenn in Zukunft das ganze Studium hier angeboten kriegt.
At the moment, the uni might only be a small seat.
But maybe in another 10 years, it will become a big tree.
We've heard the university's innovative, open-minded, focused, work in progress. Lovely words to sum up everything, and I haven't summed them all up. So let's start with this debate, and I'll start with the first question to the Minister. The university aims at being a world-class university and a university relevant to its country. If both goals could not be achieved, in your opinion, which would be the most important one?
Well, I have done my homework and I have tried to answer the question, but I admit that I really don't like this question because both goals should be pursued simultaneously and with the same degree of commitment. And the University of California at Berkeley is a good example for it, that this is possible. It shows us that excellence can really be achieved even when you serve the needs of a regional or local community. So for me, I think there is no need to give a priority.
What do you think about this, Mr. Tarr?
Well, I think the minister is right. Nobody has proven that one cannot achieve both goals at the same time, and therefore we should. And in fact, I would even say that both goals reinforce one the other. It's very likely that it's difficult to be relevant to the country if we are not good internationally. And on the other side, very likely it's also very difficult to be internationally well accepted if we are not, in some sense, relevant to the country. So when I say that the minister is right, it's not a formal statement, it is a statement of a scientist.
What does the former student think about this exactly?
You know, when I was thinking about this question, I came across this idea that perhaps the university should be the national priority. So if the university focuses on itself, then perhaps, invest in itself, then perhaps it will serve more the national priority and by that be a world-class university. So I think there is this idea of actually investing in teaching, in, more staff, better quality of the lectures, evaluation, and so on. So really focus it on the university first, I think.
Mr. Bausch, what is your view on the question?
Yeah, Natasha, I will obviously look at it from the perspective of the economy. And I think if the university is to serve the objectives of the Luxembourg economy, meaning that it's focusing on the activities where Luxembourg is differentiating itself or target to differentiate itself in the future, then I think by itself it will achieve as a result a global standing while being very much focused on the interests of the company, of the country. So for me, as all the others said, I think the two goals are really connected and they are not contradicting each other.
Good. That brings me to the next question about external funding, Mr. Bausch. That will play an important role in the future. Today, roughly 20% of the university's budget is externally funded, being by FNR, Fonds National de la Recherche, the European Union, or the various seats that, or the chairs rather, from private companies such as SES. What do you think about this figure? Is that enough? Should it be raised?
Yeah, I think in terms of external funding, we should not speak about a static metric, because first, university role is still very young, and so setting objectives after 10 years, I think, would be misleading. But what definitely should be an objective is that the percentage of external funding should steadily increase, because that would then reflect the value that the economy, meaning the companies, the institutions, are giving to the university. And so I think that should be the target really of the university. It will always remain mainly funded by the Luxembourg state, but it should have a growing external funding percentage. And then the approach, I think, of those doing the external funding is very much focused on activities and on different purposes. So you will perfectly find in the university centers, entities, where the external funding percentage might be extremely high. And for others, which is really a matter more of national interest, you will basically have no external funding at all. In the case of SES, I'm looking towards Björn Otterstein and really the center of security, reliability and trust, the interdisciplinary center, where we are one of the sponsors with other companies. Michel Wirth mentioned ArcelorMittal. There are institutions who are also funding this. There is the Fonds National de la Recherche, who is very much contributing to the funding of the center, plus EU money, European Space Agency money. And I think in total it's now close to 2/3 of the income of that interdisciplinary center that's coming from external funding. And that, I think, nicely demonstrating what can be achieved if the activities are very much focused. From our perspective, for example, from SES, when Wolf many years ago asked us whether we would not be interested to become a sponsor, we were looking at this as a kind of sponsoring activities. If today you ask SES, what is this contribution of, I think, 2 million over a 5 years period or whatever, how are you looking at this contribution? Nobody would say it's sponsoring. What we are saying today, it's part of our research and development activities. We have a network of universities also because we have a company in Princeton, so Princeton University is part of this network, and the Luxembourg University is playing an important role in this. We have a scientific cooperation agreement with the center in order to develop future-oriented satellite communication networks that are able to host new services in the most cost-efficient manner. And all of this is done in a symbiosis really between the university and between SES. And you can see it also in our daily life. For example, I think we have now permanently 6 PhD candidates that are working in our company with the SES employees on developing these projects. And so I think that's really the way to best guarantee that external funding will continue to increase in the future and will be meaningful also for the university.
Mrs. Hansen, as a minister, how do you see this? It's very nice, these
yes,
achievements, really.
I think you have to see, as Mr. Bausch told it, that Uni.lu has to run a number of teaching programs like education, because essentially the country needs well-trained people in those domains. And the question is rather what parts of the university should attract more external funding, and here research should be one of those parts. External funding is also a good indicator to measure quality of research activities. So it is very useful here to have perhaps more external funding, and therefore I think 20% to my mind is perhaps a low percentage if applied to research.
Mm-hmm. The president of the university, when he hears these figures, I mean 20%, 30%, what do you make of all this, Mr. Tarr?
Well, I think that, all relevant remarks have been made, and Wittgenstein once said that if you don't have anything to add, shut up. Nevertheless, I would like to add one remark. University is a place where we have very clever people, and so which makes it very nice. But these clever people, they then tell me, in those places where we get so much help from society, from companies, and I think it is great, they then tell me, look, the percentage of what I get from the university, which is the public money, which we get from the ministry, which the taxpayers pay, that percentage is very small. And that does not allow us to protect our profile, our more academic aspects, with respect to all these companies who want us to do this and that and that. So how can we solve this problem? Now there are only two ways of solving this problem. Either you tell them, well, don't take so much money from outside, and I'm not going to say that, or you say, okay, I'll give you more money from inside, which is what we want to do. But of course, that again puts us into a very difficult situation. Success always comes, with a few new challenges.
Did you feel anything about the funding when you were studying at the university? I mean, is that a topic that touched you? Is it something that was discussed? Is it something that students are aware of?
Yeah, well, my PhD project was funded by the Fonds National de la Recherche. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the only actually funding agency that I know that is really focusing on social sciences. So you were saying before that there were companies that are investing in other disciplines, and I think the percentage of the external funding is according to the discipline. So the FNR really invested in social sciences, and I wish there are more agencies, and I wish that there are more external funding for the social sciences and for the interdisciplinary work, so that we and the FNR and the other companies can make such a project in an interdisciplinary way. So I think that could be an idea to work on.
So the university helps the economy, and the economy helps the university.
Yes.
Everybody's happy about this.
Exactly.
It's a good model. So high-quality teaching and research are expensive. I mean, that's a known fact. But students are asking for more services, obviously. I mean, it's a young university. They want more things to learn, more people to teach them. It has to be financed. The enrollment fees at Uni.lu are very low. Yeah. What should the university do in the future? Raise fees or just adjust what's being done now? What do you think?
Oh, now comes the question. You're asking a former student. So you see, the low tuition fee was something that attracted me to this country and to this university. And this low tuition fee changed my life. So when you think about it, it really has an influence on individual lives of the students. And in those times, I wouldn't be very happy to have the tuition fees raised. And however, during our dinner last night, when we were talking about the tuition fees and so on at the University of Iceland, for example, so the rector of the University of Iceland said, well, we raised the tuition fees and the students didn't mind. So that was another idea for me to think about, okay, maybe we can raise the tuition fees, but not that much. So, it depends whether the raise will be 10%, 20%, and so on. And it also depends whether the students are from Luxembourg or from, other countries. Because if you have the low tuition fees, then it will attract international students, like myself, and, students who are from China and so on, and from low financial backgrounds. And I think those students have this curiosity for knowledge, and I think it's a good thing to have a low tuition fee. However, and this is related to some other questions. I think that, you know, in order to prevent the drop-off later on, it would be good to have an entry exam that will select the students who are really here to provide and develop knowledge, and those who are probably or maybe lost. So, you know, I would suggest to keep the low tuition fees and have the entry exams, and yeah, work on that level.
Mrs. Hansen, what do you think about entry exams?
Well, I think that the question implies that there is a lack of funding, but I think that actually there isn't really a lack of funding. I also think that the university has experienced enormous growth over the last decade. Some of its research areas will now need consolidation, and at the same time, I think that the university will also have to look into possible efficiency gains, perhaps. In terms of fees, the legislator has left the decision with the university, but to my mind, fees should not constitute an obstacle, making access difficult for students from less privileged backgrounds. So access to university must be merit-based, perhaps by a test, as you told it. Yes. And by the way, the financial aid in Luxembourg has fees as one criterion. So the university might perhaps also wish to think about developing a bursary scheme. This might perhaps be one of the role alumni could wish to play. Mm-hmm. And at this moment, I don't really think that there is a need to raise fees.
Mm-hmm. How do you see this, Mr. Tara? I can see you nodding.
Well, it's a very interesting subject, you know, about which one could be talking for hours. Now, the minister, of course, has given the solution. If we get enough support from the government, if we get enough, if our budget goes up, then, you know, we will not be talking about fees. So I understood that this is a promise, that we don't have to talk anymore about that. Now, nevertheless, if we were a little bit more, you know, clever, and knowing that the aide financière cover the up to, I don't know how much money, what the students pay for fees, you know, in principle, if we were economically a little bit clever, what we would do is to raise our fees to what you cover, by which we would force the government through other channels to give us more money, or to give the students more money. Now, we have not been doing it because we are very fair, and because we are sure that we will get the money anyhow from the government, you know, without having to do that. Finally, and that's the last remark, what is essential, and that was said by Gabriela, we have to make sure that the good students from abroad, that they come to our university, you know, whether they have money or not have money. I mean, so if the fees are higher, we have to have a system by which we support them, so that should never be a problem for them not to come.
I mean, it's clearly an asset to the country if foreign students are going to come here, take their time, study in Luxembourg, stay in Luxembourg, integrate big Luxembourgish companies, as Mr. Bausch was saying earlier on. I mean, it's a proven success story, isn't it? Mr. Bausch, would you like to add something?
So I will not comment on the fees. I think we all agree that they should be as low as possible. But really, the diversity of the funding, I think, can help to address this issue. There are the scholarships, for example, as yes, we are financing scholarships of other universities that are specialized in the satellite business worldwide. So that's something I think the university can still develop. Alumni programs where companies are sponsoring also universities. And maybe I think Wolf mentions this in one of his many interviews over the last days about foundation, that maybe you create really a very substantial foundation in Luxembourg where people can contribute to, and then with the product of the capital you can also finance part of the activities of the university.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mrs. Hansen, a foundation, what do you see in this?
Well, a foundation or an endowment What is it? It is the result of fundraising through gifts and bequests, and the instrument is used especially in a society where the individual citizens feel a moral obligation to donate some of the wealth they acquired in their lifetime to charity organizations like university. But here in continental Europe, there is a public responsibility for higher education, and in other words, the commitment shifts from the individual to the public domain, and moreover, philanthropy is here in Luxembourg, is not really embedded in Luxembourg tradition. An endowment is also about investing the endowment, so that the financial yields of the investment fund can be used to finance the university, and there you must when you want to have a good yield, about, I don't know, 4%. So if you have an endowment of 100 million euro, it will still not cover a substantial part of an annual budget. So I think that the question is really, what do you want? Whether we want a private or a public university. And here I clearly opt for the latter, for the public university, which does not preclude that the necessity to have a share of private money to finance a university, but I want a public university.
Mr. Tarach, you obviously agree with this. You would also like a public university.
Well, I mean, I have to agree, but nevertheless, I mean, I would say that this distinction of public and private will disappear. You know, I mean, it's going to disappear. I mean, if you look at the American universities, where you have private universities and public universities, the public universities get lots of money from industry, and the private university gets lots of money from the government. So it's something which has often to do with whether they have to accept students from in the United States from a given state and these things, but not so much where the money comes from. I think we need diversity. Romain said it. We need money coming from different parts. That strengthens our autonomy. The university has to be autonomous. It cannot depend, on the little details of what happens in that moment. And the diversity of funding, of course, is part of this buttressing of the autonomy. Now, you are, of course, right, Madame la Ministre, when you say that with 4%, if it is secure, we might get 4%. Well, you have to subtract 2% of inflation, then 2% remain. What do you do with this? You don't do much. No. However, if you go to a bank and you need a loan and you have your own money, you get the loan immediately. While if you go to the bank and you need a loan and you say, all what I have is debts, then you don't get the money. I mean, the countries know these. Look around in Europe. But that is essential. So a university which has an endowment, you don't have to use your own endowment, but you can get easily money to a much lower rate than if all what you have are debts. So I'm rather for a university which is a public university, but with a strong support from society, which means also from companies, and with a diversity of funding and autonomous, and which will be great.
We've been talking about it all morning. You've seen it in the videos as well. I mean, Luxembourg University is very multicultural, multilingual. Things are being taught in French, German, English. Some very renowned teachers would like to keep it to English only. Is this a danger? Is this an opportunity? Is this good? Is this bad? I think I'll ask Gabriela first, because you've been there, coming from abroad. I mean, you're the perfect example to illustrate this.
Yes, also one of the questions that are difficult. For me, when I came here, it was easy to study in English, and I wished everything was in English. However, some of the teaching material was in French, which pushed me to learn French. So you can't really say there is only one option, because you have to think about the teaching material that exists in different languages and in different disciplines. Also about the teachers that are available, language skills of the students, and so on. So there are many factors that are influencing this reality that you are talking about. And if I am the person who would decide what to do, I would always give an option. Because we have preferences for languages. We have preferences, I mean, even the disciplines have preferences in some languages, like IT in English and law in French and so on. So perhaps it would be a good idea to give the option to the students to follow one direction in one or two languages, not to damage them by the other language that they do not understand. Because, you know, I am speaking from my personal experience, so I think this is a really important topic. Yeah, the option is a good idea, I think.
But Mr. Tar, what are the reasons for the people trying to defend English as the main language within the university? What are they, how do they justify this?
Well, I think Executive Director Heikens then told us that if you look at the Nobel Prizes, I mean, most of them go to the United States. So most of the young researchers want to go there. So English is the language of certainly of all the hard sciences. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we in our university, the Faculty of the Hard Sciences, they run it in English basically. But it is slowly also being in the soft sciences a dominant language, with a few exceptions. It is a scientific language. It is the language of business. I'm pretty sure in SAS you're doing more and more things than just in English. So it simplifies the running the university very much if you just use English. You know, I speak sometimes German, I speak sometimes French, I speak sometimes English when I speak publicly, and it makes the whole thing quite complex and more expensive, to say the truth. Now, on the other hand, an English-only university would also imply that we use a language which is basically the only language which has no official role in Luxembourg. You know, the three official languages, in some sense, of Luxembourg, none of these languages is English. Of course, that can be changed. Maybe one day English will be also an official language, but it's not the case. And it would look a little bit strange that a public university uses only a language which is just not a language of the country. That's number one. And number two, that's maybe a little bit more personal. I think every young person has to speak English. I mean, we don't have to waste time discussing that. When I see at the discussions, you know, here about, you know, whether more English or not, every young person has to know English. I mean, that's what it is. Now, then, of course, French and German are added values. The real added values are French and German, not English. Now, once English is the by default language, then it's the other languages which are the added values. And from that point of view, if we have our students, if they speak all three languages, ideally, you know, they have a huge job market. You still need in France French, and you still need in Germany German, and so on. You know, so and we have to think of our students. And then I'm a convinced European, absolutely convinced European, and these are essential European languages. So we should not, I mean, we are not Singapore, right? We are not Hong Kong. I think so, but as you said, I mean, some of our top people insist, you know, that we should be English only. Difficult subject.
But one of the assets of Luxembourg is all these languages. So, I mean, if we want to make of the university something really special for the rest of the world, why not enhance these assets? What do you think, Mrs. Hansen?
I also think that the multilingualism is also a question of culture and tradition, and the multilingualism in the university reflects the multilingualism of the country. And I think that's important for our university. We just have one university, and so I think it's a really important point to our university. And to my mind, the university has struck a good balance between English only and multilingual programs. And I really still feel that the multilingualism of Uni.lu is really a defining factor, and therefore should also be kept as such.
We have in the proposal of the budget of the next 4-year plan, there is a line for multilingualism, and I understand that you just said that we will get that money.
But I mean, nowadays in Luxembourg, it's no longer a problem.
I've made no promise, okay?
It's no longer a problem in Luxembourg to be a Luxembourg-based company and speak English, for example, Mr. Bausch. I mean, you live it every day at SES.
Yeah. As you know it well. But, for example, there's nothing wrong in choosing in Luxembourg a language which is neither French or German or Luxembourgish. When SES has been incepted, and some of the people are here in the room, so they can certify this, would we not have taken English as a working language, we would probably never have succeeded to put any satellite in orbit and to control any satellite here from Luxembourg, because English was the only language that really worked in our area. So I think from a professional perspective, English is paramount. I think also from academia, when you look at the research papers, at the theses, most of the things are in English. So for me, when you have to select one language, it has to be English for me. Yeah. But then, obviously, there are other aspects. There is a multilingual approach that you want to have. You have law, which obviously has to be in French, or should be in French. You have the administration in Luxembourg. So I think it has to be somewhere à la carte, but English has to be in the center of this menu.
Mm-hmm. And in order to make this decision, who's going to make it? How long is it going to take? Is it something we're going to talk about for the 20 years of the university, Mr. Tarach?
Well, I mean, for the time being, we are still, our model is the multilingual one with these 3 languages, and we are going to reinforce it. Now, the question is, and I think that's the question, is it sustainable? I mean, what is going to be in 20 years? I don't know. It will depend also very much, on the next president of the university. I mean, if this person doesn't speak the 3 languages and maybe speaks only 2, well, that will have some influence, and of the new deans, and and so on. It will depend on the leadership of the university, on the society. But English, of course, will be more and more dominant. Whether the other languages will survive 10, 20, 30 years, an infinite number of years or not, that I just, I have no idea.
Did you want to add something, Mr. Bausch? No. Gabriela, did you want to add something to this?
Well, I just wanted to quickly add that if we want to be a world-class university, then English is a must. So we can't go without it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of summing this up.
Maybe then to add the one word I wanted to say is, when you look out, as Rolf did it 10 years from now, 20 years from now, without any doubt, the role of English will not decrease. On the contrary, if you look at in the business environment, only 10 years ago, in France, you were speaking French. Today, you speak a lot of English in France, also with French business people. So when you look forward, definitely, I think if we want to have a forward-looking university, clearly there has to be the choice that English is paramount, and then don't forget the multilingual skills and the advantages this brings, but it has to be built around a center language.
So in order to...
We will hire Romain when he is fed up with SS at the university.
Okay, we can discuss that over the cocktail later on. I'll leave the 2 of you to discuss that. So in order to finish this round table and to sum up, I mean, Mr. Tarach, you mentioned the dreams that you have for the university. I'd like to hear from all the people in the panel what their particular dream would be for the university's future. Gabriela, perhaps first.
Yeah, you didn't give me the time to think about this. Yeah, my dream would be that the University of Luxembourg invest in the quality of teaching, invest in critical thinking of students, invest in more reflection, more creativity. And I think when I mention this word creativity is something that is related to what we have been talking about last night. I think for creativity we need to have some instability at the university. And I think this is a good place to start with, because this university has some problems, and rather they should be really seen as resources for creativity. Because I think this instability can can provide more productivity and more quality and can really push people to solve it in a way that is, beneficial for both the teachers and the students. So I wish for this university to be more creative.
Okay, Mrs. Hansen, what do you wish for the university?
Yes, I wish good luck to the university, and I wish that the university will really be a world-class university very soon. It has done very good work, and so I am really convinced that it will be a world-class university. But I have found a new challenge. I've told it already to Mr. Tarrach. I have an article from I think, Le Monde. L'université française passe de l'amphi au cours en ligne, et les universités vont disparaître dans leur forme actuelle, comme les abbés au temps de Gutenberg, prédit l'expert de la Commission européenne. Donc là, it's a new challenge for the university, and I hope that you will also take this challenge.
Yeah, would you like to take the challenge?
Sure. Now, this is a major subject. In fact, yesterday evening we were also talking about that. Now, I just wanted to add, I also would like the university to play a major role in Europe. Mm-hmm. You see, but in the building up of the Europe we need, because we don't have the Europe we need. Europe is still not conscious enough of the problems we have in Europe. And that if we want to survive as a continent, we have to start doing something, not talking, but doing something. And I hope that our university will lead a little bit within the university, because we are in a position where we can do this, to build up, to have also that our students, the people who leave, who study in our university and leave with their degrees, that they become real Europeans. And to me, a real European is a person who is European not because he's a nationalist, but because she or he is really European. And we need much more of this. Otherwise, Europe will have a tough time in the future. And then, of course, it will be tough for our university and for our country, too.
Mr. Bausch, what is your dream for the university?
But I think Wolf did put it well, to have a world-class university that's relevant for Luxembourg. And I would insist on the second one, relevant for Luxembourg, meaning we're looking after the needs of the Luxembourg economy, the strengths of the Luxembourg economy, to help developing the economy into those fields where we believe that we have competitive edge, be it in the industrial field, be it in the finance field, and then avoiding to make mistakes. And I believe one of the biggest mistakes would be to invest in too many formations that might be very expensive, and where you can have a more efficient use of the public money, of the taxpayers' money, by simply helping Luxembourg students to do these studies abroad. And that's bringing me to the other point. When the university was incepted 10 years ago, I was also among those who were a little bit afraid that maybe young Luxembourgers would no longer spend enough time abroad. So also this would also help that at least some of the Luxembourgers would still need to go abroad. So I believe it should also not lead to a situation where the majority of the Luxembourg students in 10 years or 20 years from now would never have studied outside of Luxembourg. And I think the two things are somewhat combined. Mm-hmm. If you focus on the things that are relevant for Luxembourg, that you can do cost efficiently in a small country like Luxembourg, then you also probably leave enough room for people to study abroad.
Thank you for this. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much for your input on this and this roundtable for the 10 years of the university. So we're going to stay within the general theme of the university's past, present and future. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Michel Margue and ask him to join us on stage. Mr. Margue, Professor of History and former Dean of the Faculty of Language and Literature, Humanities, Art and Education. Professor Margue is going to tell us about a new book that sums up the 10 years of the university.
Altesse royale, mesdames, messieurs, le premier luxembourgeois à avoir fondé une université, l'empereur Charles IV, fondateur de l'université de Prague avec laquelle l'Université du Luxembourg vient d'ailleurs de sceller une convention de coopération, Charles IV fut un fin politique. Il ne se contenta pas de régner et donc de marquer son présent. Il écrivit aussi sa propre histoire, une remarquable autobiographie pour marquer l'avenir. Il vaut mieux en effet ne pas laisser aux autres le soin d'écrire l'histoire. Pour ses 10 ans, l'Université du Luxembourg a donc décidé de ponctuer son anniversaire par un livre. Mais comme nous ne sommes plus au Moyen-Âge et qu'il existe à l'université de nombreuses chaires très critiques qui apprennent à lire entre les lignes, ce livre n'est pas une simple autobiographie, et encore moins une publicité. À l'image du monde académique, nous l'avons voulu critique, profond et utile. Utile parce qu'il aide à comprendre le sens à donner aujourd'hui à l'institution universitaire, les objectifs que l'université s'est fixés, ainsi que son évolution. Profond parce qu'il lie l'analyse historique, donc le passé, aux réalisations, le présent, et à une mise en perspective, le futur. Et critique enfin, parce qu'il jette sur l'histoire de l'université un regard multiple, un regard interne bien sûr, avec celui des professeurs, des responsables, des étudiants, mais aussi un regard externe. C'est cette démarche qui a déterminé la structure du livre, que vous me permettrez de présenter très brièvement en ne citant pas les auteurs et leurs mérites parce que je n'aurai pas le temps. Un premier chapitre présente le paysage universitaire actuel. L'université n'est plus celle que la plupart de nous ont jadis connue. Plusieurs concepts se dessinent dans l'évolution récente de la gouvernance universitaire, de la multiversity à l'entrepreneurial university, en passant par la global university. Des auteurs experts dans l'analyse de l'enseignement supérieur situent le cadre international dans lequel la jeune Université du Luxembourg évolue et mesurent les défis qui lui sont posés pour être compétitive. Les 2 chapitres suivants sont destinés à éclairer le moment fondateur de l'Université du Luxembourg, en retraçant le contexte académique antérieur, les établissements supérieurs d'antan, mais aussi les débats de société assez violents qui préludèrent au vote de la loi de 2003 et la philosophie qui a déterminé cette loi. Le chapitre « Réalisation » ensuite jette un regard critique sur les 10 premières années, au niveau universitaire global, mais aussi dans la perspective des 3 facultés et des 2 centres interdisciplinaires. Par ailleurs, les unités de recherche ont été invitées à présenter chacune un de leurs grands projets, afin d'illustrer de manière concrète le programme de recherche de notre université. Nous avons voulu compléter cette présentation fragmentée par des thématiques transversales. Le multilinguisme, on vient d'en parler, l'espace au sens abstrait mais aussi concret, l'espace universitaire, la politique en faveur de l'égalité des chances, le regard de la presse. Des témoignages du monde estudiantin et du monde professionnel complètent cette analyse. Et enfin, le volume se termine par une mise en perspective du projet université avec un second moment fondateur, le moment passionnant Belleval. Plusieurs idées de force se dégagent de ces points de vue divers. Les auteurs sont tous d'accord pour souligner l'intensité du défi que représentait en 2003 la fondation d'une université au Luxembourg. L'originalité du concept d'une université qui se veut une université moderne, l'essor remarquable en 10 années, la recherche permanente de la qualité et le souci, on l'a aussi répété, de concilier les dimensions internationales et nationales. Permettez-moi de conclure sur une dernière idée. Expérience unique, dans les 2 sens du terme, l'Université du Luxembourg, en bonne démarche scientifique, se doit de se soumettre régulièrement à l'exercice de l'autoréflexion. Ou pour reprendre l'idée d'un de nos auteurs, le Professor Robert Harmson, the situation of the University of Luxembourg is undoubtedly a unique one, that of a newly founded institution operating within a wider policy environment that has never before had to deal with the demands made by and on a full-fledged university. This book, it is hoped, will provide useful reference points for reflecting on this unique experience as it moves forward into its second, inescapably challenging decade. Merci. Altesse, en témoignage reconnaissant de l'intérêt que vous n'avez cessé de montrer à notre institution, permettez-nous de vous offrir ce regard que nous espérons être un élément très important du développement de votre pays.
So if you think back, you probably remember your university years as a place of study, but you probably had fun as well. And you did sports and you had activities and theatre, and of course music often plays a big part in universities as well. So please welcome the University Choir.
That's
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And in order to close the formal part of this séance académique, please welcome Mr. Mark Jäger to the stage.
Altesse Royale, Präsenz haut heiers für uns Engeier, mir sie froh an hofrisch, dass haut hei sieht, und wir sind doch an ein Sinn d'Encouragement für weiterzumachen und für noch besser zu gehen. Altesse Royale, veuillez accepter nos vifs et profonds remerciements à cet égard. Monsieur le Président de la Chambre des députés, Madame, Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames, Messieurs les députés, Excellences, chers amis, ne voyez pas dans l'utilisation de la langue française autre chose qu'un signe de facilité pour la langue de travail qui est la mienne au quotidien dans une autre vie professionnelle. Et ce n'est certainement pas un préjugé d'une décision du Conseil de gouvernance si un jour cette décision devait nous être adressée. Alors, l'Université du Luxembourg, elle a 10 ans et tant d'invités de renom pour célébrer cet anniversaire d'une institution encore à l'âge de l'enfance en dit long sur l'attachement que sa famille lui porte. Après ses premiers pas et leur nécessaire tâtonnement, l'Université du Luxembourg a progressivement, mais sûrement, suscité la reconnaissance du milieu académique et l'adhésion de la société luxembourgeoise. Encore de taille proportionnée à son âge, notre université n'en est pas moins influente. Elle tire notamment ceci de son ancrage luxembourgeois, son ancrage international, ainsi que d'une volonté d'excellence dans toutes nos activités. L'université a réussi, de par son enseignement et la recherche, à donner vie à son potentiel créatif et à offrir des opportunités qui transforment quotidiennement la vie de nos étudiants, de notre communauté universitaire et de notre société. Et en tant que président du Conseil de gouvernance, je ne peux donc que me réjouir de ces accomplissements et féliciter toute la communauté universitaire pour ce succès. Laissez-moi très brièvement faire quelques remerciements, même si, à suivre la citation de notre recteur, si on n'a pas beaucoup à ajouter, so shut up. Je vais néanmoins continuer brièvement pour ces remerciements. D'abord et avant tout, je voudrais remercier les étudiants pour nous avoir accordé leur confiance dans la préparation de leur avenir et du coup également du nôtre. Puis tout le personnel académique pour s'être montré à la hauteur de cette confiance que nous donnent les étudiants. Le personnel académique, le personnel administratif, technique et scientifique également, pour avoir créé les conditions de l'infrastructure incontournable pour le travail de l'université. Remerciements aussi aux décideurs politiques pour la continuité de leur soutien et remerciements aussi, cher Rolf, pour tout l'engagement pendant les années où tu assures cette présidence de l'université. Merci surtout aussi pour ces derniers mois. Alors, pour garantir notre avenir et pour s'assurer que nous continuerons à vous servir avec la même ferveur, nous sommes prêts à accepter les nouveaux défis qui se présenteront à nous, à savoir continuer à recruter du personnel et des étudiants de très haut niveau, attirés vers l'université par sa réputation et sa qualité. Positionner l'université comme un des pionnières dans le transfert et la création d'un savoir capable de soutenir la politique et les activités de l'université, mais tout en construisant des relations positives et des passerelles mutuellement enrichissantes avec les stakeholders externes. Autre défi, promouvoir une recherche de renommée internationale qui permet d'augmenter sensiblement l'étendue du savoir et de la compréhension humaine. Former des diplômés de très haute qualité qui seront des citoyens globaux, capables de faire une contribution importante à l'économie et à la société dans notre monde interconnecté. Et j'ai bien perçu le message de notre ministre concernant un effort à faire dans le e-learning. Servir ensuite, dernier défi, servir notre région et continuer à rendre l'éducation accessible à tous ceux qui voudront en bénéficier. Alors ces défis posent évidemment des questions. Comment grandir sans perdre notre identité? Comment former un nombre grandissant d'étudiants de haut niveau? Comment développer notre environnement de recherche? Comment nous engager avec ceux qui ont choisi de nous soutenir? Ces questions nous occuperont pendant les prochaines années. Nos choix pour l'âge adolescent de notre université influenceront de manière déterminante son statut futur. C'est pourquoi je me permets de terminer avec un défi pour notre communauté universitaire et avec des remerciements pour la société qui nous soutient. D'abord, la communauté universitaire. Je demande qu'elle continue à contribuer au débat suscité par ces questions et la qualité de ces débats influencera nécessairement les orientations de l'université. La responsabilité ici est très grande. Ensuite, la société en général. J'exprime un grand merci pour nous confier la génération de demain qui sera appelée à façonner et à améliorer le monde. Cette confiance appelle à notre responsabilité et à notre capacité de faire les bons choix dans l'orientation future de l'université. Nous sommes très fiers de notre passé des 10 ans. Nous sommes sereins pour notre avenir et nos ambitions sont grandes. À cet égard, notons que parmi nous, dans cette assemblée, se trouve aujourd'hui le Executive Director of the Nobel Foundation. Cher Lars, pour nous avoir côtoyés pendant 5 ans, permettez un rêve que les autres n'ont pas osé exprimer, sans tentative de prise d'influence, et même si pour 2013, c'est désormais raté pour avoir un prix, nous, à l'université, nous ne perdons pas espoir pour en avoir un en 2014. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jäger. So this was the last intervention. And as I said, we're not going to pass an exam, you're not going to pass any tests, but I would like to invite you to join us for a cocktail. But before we do so, please stand up so that the Grand Duke and the Grand Duchess may leave. We'll meet each other during the cocktail. Thank you. Have a good day.